what Nigel's running, in my view now, and it's become clear to me, and I helped him as much as anybody, and I admire some of the things he's good at, but I'll tell you something, he's not fit to be Prime Minister. He's running a cult. He's surrounded by lightweight people whose idea of policy is to wander down to the Marquis of Granby and have a pint and then come up with some sort of press conference the following day. Well, that's not how it works, Emily. I reckon if we don't sort this out by 29, this country will self-immolate. It will self-immolate because nobody's going to invest here. Nobody's going to take risk here.
Are you talking to the Tory party now?
I could join the Tory party tomorrow, I think.
Rupert Lowe, good to see you. You have just heard that the CPS have ruled out charges against you over allegations of verbal threats. Talk us through how that happened, when you learned.
Well, I'm still not quite clear what I was accused of because, extraordinarily, in Britain today, people can make false statements about each other, and the police wouldn't show my lawyers the actual statements that made some allegations. So I'm not quite clear entirely what they were. I think the whole process is flawed. I'm going to raise it in Parliament. Am I any different from the way I was before yesterday? No, because I didn't do anything. So I've been in my life through a great number of rough and tumbles, including libel trials. I've had my phones hacked by the British media, for which I was compensated when I was chairman of Southampton. So it's all part of life's rich tapestry, but I don't like what's happened. I think it's sinister, and I think it's not, in my view, the way in which British law should operate. We're all supposed to be innocent till we're proven guilty, and for a 67-year-old pensioner with a completely clean criminal record to be treated as if I was guilty till proven innocent, I think that's a reversal of the way in which the system should work, quite apart from the fact the police leaked my full name, and they then leaked the fact that they were passing the file to the CPS, which they shouldn't do. You should not have any form of publicity ahead of a decision to charge or not. So there's been lots of breaches. I think lawfare has been used, and I'm concerned about how many other people are suffering from the same thing. And I think in a country where we are packed with illegal migrants who shouldn't be here and are allowed to be here and are breaking the law technically by being here, to then exercise lawfare on the basis of false witness statements against honest tax-paying citizens is frankly disgusting. So I'm going to raise it in Parliament. I'm going to ensure that we get to the bottom of how this is allowed to happen. And I think the Met Police need to be held to account for the way in which they behaved.
Will you take action against the police?
I'll see.
For the leaking?
I'll see. Possibly.
Just talk us through the impact the investigation had on you. I mean, you've said you're the same person today as you were yesterday. But
look, Emily, it didn't have any impact on me. I carried on because I knew I hadn't done anything. But I'm sure there are lots of innocent people languishing in British prisons who equally didn't do anything, and yet they've been found guilty because this kind of lawfare, and as I said to you, if people make a false statement, so I could make a false statement against you that you had threatened me, however. By the way, this was a threat that was supposed to have taken place 3 months before. From the witness statement, the person involved couldn't even, not that I've seen it, but from the questioning I've had, he didn't remember the date. The WhatsApp chain subsequently didn't even suggest there was an issue. There was a robust debate at a meeting, but no more. And, I've run multiple businesses, I employ multiple people. I've never had an issue with anybody who works for me, with me, or indeed is a colleague. I've never had a fight. I've never done anything which I feel ashamed of. So I'm a pretty robust person. I'm one of 4 boys and I'm the oldest, and I roll with the punches. So I can take it, but I think there are people who arguably this is not fair and it's not the right way that British justice should work.
But I guess it did work in the sense that the charges haven't been pressed. You're not languishing in jail.
It took an awfully long time, Emily, and the process almost is part of the punishment. So
you feel like you're guilty even if you haven't been found guilty? Well,
you have to sit there like a lemon waiting for... And the police did their work quite quickly, and we then had to wait for the CPS because as an MP, apparently as a high-profile person, your file is always, I think, I understand, passed to the... And again, I've not done this before, so it's all new, but I understand it's passed to the CPS just to make sure there's no issue that they're concerned about. So look, I mean, there were witness statements that conflicted each other. There were... I didn't see the accusations that were made against me. The police, in my view, wrongly should have shown us what the charges were, and we could have then effectively dealt with with answering them. But as it was, they wouldn't show us. I just had to no comment to everything.
So your words then, a sinister attempt to weaponise the criminal justice system. Who was making that sinister attempt? How are they weaponising the justice system?
Well, if you look at the chain of events, and I think this is an interesting situation because everybody in Parliament knew it was complete rubbish. I mean, even Emily, well, not Emily, even if Daisy Cooper, she came and threw her arms around me. Now, Daisy and I are politically very different,
MP.
But I think Parliament could pretty much universally see that this was an attempted political assassination.
On the part of who?
It was by reform of me, my colleagues. These are my colleagues, Emily. They're people I'd worked with very closely. I'd fought.
You say reform, not Nigel Farage. You think it was a party thing?
I think Nigel knew about it. In my view, I think it'd be difficult not to. You wouldn't be acting as a leader if you didn't. I mean, after I was one of 5 MPs, I was driving quite a lot of support for reform. So I think if you look at the accusations of suffering from early onset dementia, that's pretty vile. If I did have early onset dementia, which I can assure everybody I don't, the last thing you should be doing is accusing somebody of suffering from an illness which is extremely serious. So that was vile, but that all played to the business of supposed bullying, threats, and it was an attempt to undermine my credibility.
Why do you think he wanted to do that if you were one of his MPs?
I think it all started because I questioned Nigel. I mean, I came to the conclusion towards the end of last year that we were going to win the election. And I think to me, it's quite clear that the once in a 100-year event in British politics is underway. The British people have had enough of the deficient government that they've got, the deficient house full of MPs who aren't fit for purpose, a front bench that hasn't got a clue what it's doing, and over successive governments, starting with Tony Blair. Let's forget John Major because he was pretty irrelevant. But let's start with Tony Blair, and then we go to David Cameron and Clegg and Cameron.
So just to get back,
May,
you think you were
Boris,
going to win the next general election?
I believe reform, and I was doing my best to ensure we did win the next general election and that Nigel became the Prime Minister. But I said to Nigel, I don't want to be part of this unless we have a shadow cabinet, a plan, policies, and, if you like, and we tell people how we're going to change the way we're governed. Because I think we do need to repeal most of the malign legislation brought in by Tony Blair, the Human Rights Act, the Equalities Act, the Supreme Court. I think the whole thing needs to be changed. And
so
then
a
load of other sort of petty little laws like the Bribery Act and other rubbish that has been brought in that has allowed this lawfare to take place. So I made it clear that I didn't want to be next to him in any capacity unless I thought we had a plan. Because Boris had an 80-seat majority, Emily, and he did the square root of nothing with it. So that is not something that I wanted to be part of, because I don't want to raise people's hopes that we're going to return Britain to the way it was when I was brought up, which was probably the best place on earth to live. We just won the Second World War. We'd been through the First World War.
I'm just trying to get
We
a
respected
sense.
individual
Yeah.
freedom. We respected people's
But
ability
why would Nigel
to
Farage
enjoy free
disagree with
speech.
that?
We respected minorities' rights to do what they want to do as long as it's not damaging the interests of other people. And we had a proper country.
Yeah.
What we've got now is we have got a vile, statist sort of bullying, and it's the state that's now bullying the individual. And what's wrong, and we don't have a constitution like America which returns the power to the individual always. We have an unwritten constitution which has been undermined by Tony Blair, Derry Irvine, Alistair Campbell,
I want to come on
Gordon
to the
Brown.
state
So
of the country
this
later. I think
Emily,
that's
this
really
needs
important.
to change. This needs to
Yeah.
change, and it won't change if we elect somebody who basically aggregates power to the centre. So when I run businesses, I hire people more able than me, and I devolve power. You actually achieve things by empowering other people. You don't achieve things by aggregating power. And I think from my knowledge of Nigel now, quite apart from the fact that if they'd been successful in their attempt, I could have ended up in prison as an innocent man. So I'm not going to forget that. But what Nigel's running, in my view now, and it's become clear to me, and I helped him as much as anybody, and I admire some of the things he's good at. But I'll tell you something, he's not fit to be Prime Minister. He's running a cult. He's surrounded by lightweight people whose idea of policy is to wander down to the Marquis of Granby and have a pint and then come up with some sort of press conference the following day. Well, that's not how it works, Emily. And we need a professional party.
And you think Nigel Farage wanted you locked up for being his political opponent?
I think they wanted to take me out of the political equation, as they did to Stephen Wolfe, as they did to Ben Habib, as they did to Kilroy Silk. It's not new. This has happened a lot. And Nigel,
but to say not just your political future but your liberty at risk, this sounds like Erdogan of Turkey.
I could have ended up in prison.
So you think he wanted you in prison to stop you getting in his
way?
Well,
I think the whole script was that I was ultimately slightly deranged. I was guilty of bullying, which, by the way, we weren't. There is no parliamentary investigation ongoing about that at the moment, and that is a clean-cut case.
And what does that say about Nigel Farage, then?
Honestly, it tells me he is not fit ever to have the power of the British state behind him, with the ability to treat people who he doesn't like badly. I don't think it plays well to that playbook. So
let's just go back to the complaints. When did you first hear there were complaints against you? Because Reform says that you knew on December the 18th of last year.
That's drivel. The first thing I got from Reform was a badly written letter from Lee Anderson, which arrived in my inbox on a Friday afternoon at about 2:30. I immediately responded, and ultimately these staff involved, and my staff, they'd been dealt with by parliamentary HR totally properly. They're not Reform staff, so they were telling, and this by the way, I have issued a 16-page letter before action, so this is going to end up in court. So I'm not going to go into the full detail of it. That would not be proper.
I just want the timeline.
But I promise you, Emily, I have
December.
a track record. I fought 2 libel trials. I've dealt with my phone hacking. I have never seen such rank amateur behaviour from any organisation, and I've run public companies. I've chaired public companies.
So what organisation? This is about
Reform.
2 women.
Reform.
Okay, I just want to get to the bottom of this then, because there was one complaint from one woman on the 17th of January in 2025, earlier this year.
Look,
there was another complaint in February.
These are complaints by 2 girls, and I'm not going to their names because that's subject to parliamentary privilege, because they work for me in Parliament, right?
Well,
so
also
these are parliamentary issues which were dealt with by parliamentary HR, and ultimately employment processes had been started before the dates that you're quoting.
Well, they've submitted formal complaints to the Grievance Committee in Parliament.
Just listen for 1 minute. Before, ultimately, these were 2 girls who actually resigned ahead of an employment process, both of them. And on balance of probability, because the process hadn't been finished, and I don't know if you've ever been through an employment process, but you go through that process, and then if you're unhappy, you dismiss the person. We didn't need to do that because they both resigned for gross misconduct at the end of the day.
Can I just
so look, Emily, I'm not going to go into private issues.
But I have
Suffice
to put this
to
to
say,
you.
I was never accused of bullying.
Yeah.
And the bullying issue was an attempt to conflate the dementia, the bullying, and the threat against Zia Yusuf, if indeed that was the main threat against me. So it was an attempt to politically assassinate me, okay? So what you have to understand is this is it's a sort of confluence of events that they've tried to conflate. And to conflate in the most vile way to make it look as if I'd lost it. Well, everybody in Parliament knows I hadn't lost it because they've seen my speeches.
Let's just pull them apart.
And I certainly haven't got early onset dementia. So
let's
I am not going to go into any further into any issues because there were no issues of bullying.
Okay.
They were completely erroneous. That is a false accusation. And if have you read my KC report, my Blackstone Chambers KC report, which completely eviscerates the process that they followed?
Okay, thank you.
Have you read that?
No.
Emily, can you read it? Before you start asking me questions about it, please read that.
Okay. So
and Jacqueline Perry-Levine is not an employment barrister or KC. She is a commercial disputes, an insurance expert. She issued her report.
You don't want me to put this.
She issued a report before it was complete.
Okay.
So look.
Okay, I'm going to put this.
This is rank amateur behaviour.
Okay, I don't think the audience is kind of with us on this. So I'm going to ask you this anyway. The barrister that was hired to conduct the investigation found there was credible claims of bullying from yourself and the team. 2 women who worked for you.
In
and
a
she
report
disputed
that
your
was
claim
issued before it was
the women
complete.
Only lodged complaints once
Hang on,
they were
Emily,
facing
in a
accusations.
report that was issued before it was complete.
So,
and I spent 15...
You deny all the bullying?
There was no bullying.
Right.
There was never a complaint of bullying against me, ever. And the complaints came after employment processes. They were vexatious complaints. Okay.
Well, there were complaints against you because on February the 27th of this year, both women emailed Zia Youssef, Reform's chairman, detailing their complaints of harassment and bullying against you and the team, requesting action be taken.
There was no accusation of bullying against me, Emily. And
You're saying the women didn't ever complain against you?
At the end of the day, what you need to look is at the chain of events. I gave an interview.
I'm looking at that now.
I gave an interview for the Daily Mail on the 25th of February. Andrew Pearce, who I gave the interview to, he bumped into one of Nigel's acolytes on the 26th at a book launch. He told him about the interview. And then suddenly all these complaints, so the complaint about the meeting
came first.
Dated back to December.
The complaints came first. The complaints came in December and
the
earlier
interview
in
was
January.
on the 25th. Knowledge of the interview was on the 26th. And you just told me the complaint came in on the 27th.
I've told you that the first complaint was
came
in
on the
December.
27th of February.
That was in December.
That was an entirely different complaint, not to me.
So let me
people
just
don't
get to the
complain
bottom of
direct
this.
to me. They complain to the ICGS. So I don't know about that.
A complaint was made to you about bullying on the 18th of December. Okay, let's just get to the bottom of this.
We're getting down into the weeds, and this will all come out in court.
Of course.
I can promise you this is going to go to court.
So you know the women involved.
They worked for us.
So
one
are
in
they
Great
making
Yarmouth,
it all up?
one in
Are they
London.
making up these claims?
You don't know the truth, so I'm not going into the truth because
Are they making up the claims? I'm just asking on behalf of the women who are here.
I believe the complaints are inaccurate and vexatious, and as I told
inaccurate
you,
or fabricated?
as I told you, we went through an employment process minuted by parliamentary HR, where they all had an opportunity. Well, certainly both of them had an opportunity to explain themselves. And I'm not going to go into the reasons, but suffice to say that they were totally valid. And as I've told you, I employ lots of people. I do know how to run employment processes, and I'm not going to allow you to lift parts of the duvet and accuse me of things that I didn't do. I think we should stop this line and move on to something more principled.
I'm putting these complaints in the timeline to you so that you can respond.
You are picking little bits out of it, and you're not looking at it correctly.
So I'm just asking you whether you completely deny any wrongdoing or any complaint from the women involved. Because it could be inappropriate but not criminal, right?
Was it
inappropriate
I have
but not
never
criminal,
bullied
perhaps?
anybody.
Yeah.
I am totally comfortable in the processes that we followed, and I can also tell you that I am totally comfortable that I have never threatened anybody, and I have a totally clean record. After 67 years, I have no track record of, even though I employ hundreds and hundreds of people, and I still do, I have no track record of treating people unfairly. Indeed, quite the opposite. And I will give you a book on our family business. It's been going 100 years, and we have people who work for us for over 55 years.
Thank you for clearing that up, Rupert. You'll understand why I asked.
I am not interested in Reform's attempt to bring up a vexatious issue, which is a non-issue, and if we go to court, I will destroy them over it because it's rubbish. Okay. So please, let's move on to something.
You're suing Farage
I have issued.
and
I just told you, if you understand defamation and libel, which I've fought against Murdoch and won. I've fought against the Mail, the Evening Standard, and won. So I know my way around. I've done 8 days in the High Court. Yes, I understand how it works. You may not. So you issue a letter before action, and it gives them a chance to effectively apologise. I've asked for an apology, and I've asked for my costs. I will issue proceedings, and we'll go to the High Court.
You will go to the High Court.
The defamation / libel.
Okay.
Against Lee Anderson, Zia Youssef, and Reform, all three.
Let's go to the beginning of this year when Elon Musk, I think it was around the 5th of January, suggested that you would make a better leader.
He didn't actually. He didn't say that quite right. Emily, you use a very broad brush of terms. No, what happened is he actually made a statement that he didn't think Nigel Farage should be leader of Reform, right? Which I now agree with. So I didn't at the time because I was working to drive Reform support along with my fellow four other MPs. He then, one of my supporters, and my social media, as you've probably seen, has grown quite strongly. In fact, it's arguably more powerful than Nigel's now. Even though he's got more followers than me, we create more content, and we I think page impressions wise, we're about 8 times more powerful.
Is that all you?
8 times more. It's me and my team.
Yeah.
It's an amalgam of, if you like, what we all think and what we all believe, and how we present it to people.
Yeah.
So one of my followers went back to Elon Musk when he said this, and he said, do you think Rupert Lowe should be leading reform? And the answer from Elon Musk was not that I should be, because I don't know Elon Musk quite correctly. What he said is, I don't know Rupert Lowe, but I like what he says on Twitter. That's what he said. So when you ask me these broad brush questions, you need to get them right. That's what he said. He did not say I should be.
Have you ever spoken to Elon Musk?
I have communicated with him on Twitter. I have not met him. I have not personally spoken to him over the phone.
He's never offered you or your campaign money?
He's never done so, but I know he supports my view on the Pakistani rape gangs, which, as you know, I've raised in Parliament. I've given speeches, and now lots of people are talking about it in Parliament. So we've moved the Overton window there. We've moved the Overton window on immigration. We've even got Keir Starmer talking about too much immigration, which, frankly, you need to be a half-wit not to realise that we've got too much immigration. But most of the people in Parliament are half-wits, and they don't seem to want to address things that are of great relevance to the British people.
What next, then, for Rupert Lowe? Are you going to... I mean, you've talked about a new movement. Is that a party that you think has a name already? Could you move inside the Tory camp?
It's a good question. I mean, at the end of the day, I think reform... And I said in the local elections which you just had, I said... You should vote for... I didn't say don't vote for reform, because I've done a lot to help reform, so I wasn't going to do anything that I thought was unfair. But what I advise people to do is vote for the candidate, the local candidate, who they thought was going to best deliver for them locally. And that doesn't matter whether it's Lib Dem, Labour, Tory or Reform. Whoever they think is going to do the best job locally. And I think nobody can disagree with that.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, Reform, in my view, have behaved as a cultist sort of Nigel Farage organisation, which basically has treated me, in my view, very unfairly. It's not. I'd certainly never have treated them in this way. I'm now left with a decision to make, and I was, to some extent, like all of us, when you're under police investigation, having never been so before, you sort of say, well, maybe I should wait until that's cleared. But I actually, about a week ago, decided, no, I'm just going to get on with it. So I am laying plans now, because I knew I'd done nothing, and I knew that there was nothing I should be concerned about.
Laying plans.
So I'm now looking at what we can do. I want, and I'm 67. I reckon if we don't sort this out by 29, this country will self-immolate. It will self-immolate because nobody's going to invest here. Nobody's going to take risk here. Nobody is going to stay living here if they're rich.
And what does sorting out mean then?
They're going to leave.
What?
So what we now have to find is, you keep firing these questions at me. I'm going to try and answer them as best I can. But
Sure.
So what we've got to do is find a formula that works, and a formula that does have a plan, that does have a shadow cabinet, that does have a professional a chance of actually changing the way in which we're governed, and repealing a lot of the maligned legislation, and introducing new policies, and explaining what those policies
and is that
are,
a party,
and
Rupert?
releasing the individual, and cutting the size of the state, and making them accountable, actually doing all the things that good government should do. Hang on. You're running ahead of yourself. So what I think needs to be done is got to find that solution. Now, is that solution a reformed Tory party? Now, I get on very well with the Tories. I mean, since this has all happened, as I said to you, Parliament knows it's complete and utter. It's a charade. And as a result, instead of being vilified, they've been very friendly to me, and they've been very helpful. And by the way, I will take it up in Parliament, because I don't think the way I've been treated is the way MPs should treat each other. So that's going to be an issue which I will raise in Parliament, because that's germane to Parliament. So the Tories have got some very bright young Tories, but they have the legacy of Boris Johnson and David Cameron. And they have a deficient head office, which needs to be removed. They have probably, of the 121 MPs, probably 70 of them aren't Tories, they're Lib Dems, because David Cameron's selection policies weren't based on merit, they were based on quotas. So what you've got is people who arguably aren't Tories, they should be working for the Lib Dems, or God forbid, even Labour, some of them. So they're not real Tories, in my opinion. So I think a reformed Tory party with the right leadership is probably the best vehicle that can rescue Britain. And Margaret Thatcher showed you what can happen when you when you shed a deficient
So reform
group of people.
Tory,
Hang on. When
have the
you asked me a
Tories-
question, I'm answering a question. When you shed a deficient
I'm
group
just
of
trying to
people,
get to the nub
Maggie
of
Thatcher
this,
gave us all
Rupert.
hope in '79. I'm older than you, but I don't know if you remember '79. But Margaret Thatcher, she gave people hope. She got rid of a statist, interventionist, trade union driven.
Are you talking to the Tory party now?
I could join the Tory party tomorrow, I think.
Have they made overtures to you?
I could join them. I mean, look, I talk to all of them all the time, and I think some
About
of them,
this, about joining?
some of them are very good people, and as I say, there's some extremely able young Tories who I think share a Tory agenda, which is what we need.
Okay.
So hang on. So that's option one. So I don't rule out some form of if
coalition.
If it reforms itself, I think the Tory party is still viable, but it's struggling. It's really struggling because it's had terrible leadership for quite a long time now. And as I say, Boris with an 80-seat majority did the square root of nothing.
Yeah, but you could imagine then a Tory Reform Pact where you would be a Tory MP, not a Reform MP. Is that right?
I'm currently an independent MP, and I was in my constituency for 3 days. So I was offshore, Great Yarmouth, on a boat with RWE, who I'm hoping will come and set up a hub in Great Yarmouth, because they're a great company and they're great people. We had a great day out, and this came through then. So I've been in the last 2 days, and as far as I can tell, and my support in Great Yarmouth has never been better. So I opened a new building called The Place in the centre of Great Yarmouth, which I don't deserve any credit for, but as a local MP, I thought I should be there. So again, all the great and good were there. But the other option is I set up a new party. That is an option. And we've got a lot of people following us on social media who would like that. And the advantage of that is you start with a clean sheet of paper. You don't have any...
These are people who don't like reform, presumably.
These are people who, I think, question the sort of cultist movement. And ultimately, they, I think, can see that winning the election isn't the issue. What you've got to do is then you can win it, but you then got to deliver. You can't win it and not deliver. So I think there are people who'd like that. I think there are a number of options really, and then obviously reform itself. Has it got the right leader? Does that leadership need to change? Would Nigel Farage ever move? Probably not. But you've got to look at all the options. So looking at all the options, these are the various options. But what I'm telling you is, British people now want change. Yeah. They want a different option.
I want to talk about that.
They don't want politically correct numpties representing them in Parliament. Okay. They don't want people who are virtue signalling do-gooders. They don't want people who've never had business experience. They don't want people who basically don't understand which way is up. So I think everybody now wants some common sense back in their lives.
Yeah, let's talk about that common sense.
And I tell them all. I say to my constituents, don't rely on me. Yeah. You go and fight for it.
Okay.
So when some jumped-up little councillor starts telling you what to do, no, you're the taxpayer. You are technically employing them. So you go back to them and you say, no, that's not good enough. You work for me. I don't work for you.
I want to talk about grooming gangs. You've launched your own inquiry. Alexis J., who, as you know, spent 7 years on a child abuse probe, says she's very unhappy with the politicisation of child sexual exploitation done, in her words, a very uninformed way. She's talking about you.
Well, she's welcome to her own opinion, as is everybody. I believe in a Britain where everybody should be able to express exactly what they want to.
Why is it funny to politicise child exploitation?
I don't have any problem. I said she's welcome to her own opinion.
But why is it funny?
But it's not funny. I mean, my driver for the rape gang inquiry is that, having looked into it, and it's something which I think a lot of people in this country probably were blissfully unaware of.
No, I don't think they were. Andrew Norfolk,
that's
who's the Times reporter.
That's your opinion. But I have picked up the mantle, and as you know, I don't call them grooming gangs. I call it Pakistani rape gangs, because 95% of these people are Pakistanis, and very often from a particular part of Pakistan.
That's absolutely not true.
So it is true. It is true. Emily. But anyway, let's
from 2023. No, I'm going to tell you this.
Let's park that.
224 white grooming gang suspects were found compared to 22 Pakistani suspects. Why do you only talk about the Pakistani grooming gangs? That's police statistics from the Times.
I've now got on my
police statistics from the Times.
If you look at my rape gang inquiry, which you asked me about.
No, I didn't. I asked you why you're insisting on politicising child exploitation.
20,000 people have donated about £620,000 now. That shows you the depth of feeling and concern amongst British people.
Doesn't it show you should be ashamed that you are making money off a re-exploitation
I'm not. I've given money.
This
I've given
position?
money. I'm not making money. I've given money to it. I will make absolutely less than zero. I've given a substantial sum to it, as have other people who care.
Why are you doing this? Why are you just trying to talk about Pakistani grooming gangs when there are 4 times, 8 times, and 10 times as many white grooming gang suspects?
Do you not think, Emily, there's an issue with Pakistani Muslims raping working-class white underage girls? Do you not think there's an issue there?
I think
there is an
appalling issue with grooming
are you telling
when it hits any community and any age. We only ever hear you talk about Pakistani perpetrators.
Are you telling me there's no issue?
I'm telling you that you are focusing on Pakistani grooming gangs because probably you're racist and you don't believe that there are white perpetrators of the same crime. Can you deny that?
I am concentrating on it because it's a blot on our national history.
Isn't any grooming a blot on our history?
It has not been properly dealt with.
Isn't any grooming a blot on our history? Why don't you talk about anyone else?
My grooming gang inquiry, I have a victim who's working with us. I have a number of people who've been directly involved. And it's underway. And if you're suggesting I'm going to make any money out of it, that is completely wrong. I've given money to it, and I intend, because I believe there should be a statutory inquiry, because that's far more powerful. The government should have a statutory inquiry. And I'm going to do everything I can to ensure I shame the government into having one.
You will know Andrew Norfolk, who's the Times reporter, who started the reporting on this in 2011.
Andrew Norfolk's done some
he
good
said
work.
The way this issue has been raised by people like Musk, like you, is exploiting these girls, making the victims all over again.
He has said some very good things, but
yes.
I am not satisfied that the British establishment has dealt with this for a number of reasons. And in my view, it's linked to county lines drugs. There's a whole raft of things that have not been properly dealt with. A bit like the lawfare against me, we have subjective policing. And as you know, the British establishment, Emily, and you're obviously clearly one of them because you obviously believe this is okay, has propagated an attempt at a multicultural society which has not worked. And what they're fearful of is admitting, firstly, that hasn't worked. They're equally, I think, fearful of the fact that the Muslim bloc vote, which in my view, I will ban, if we ever get near power, I will ban postal voting. Hang on, now I've got to finish this. You keep trying to flip over it, and I'm not going to have you, you're not going to do it.
No, I'm going to put some of your words back to you.
No, I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to answer your question because this is a huge issue. It happened largely in Labour wards. I think the police are very often to blame because I think they haven't dealt with it properly. I think some of the social services are to blame. They haven't dealt with it properly. Emily, this goes to the root of what I call woke Britain.
Okay, let's understand. Woke Britain
and I am perfectly entitled to have a crowdfunder, as an MP, to out something that I think needs outing.
Okay.
Now I'm not saying there aren't other things that need outing as well, but I think this is a particularly vile blot on Britain's history.
Yes.
You can throw as much liberal cant as you want at me, but I am not going to back down, and it's perfectly within my right. And if you can't see the fact that 20,000 people have put their trust in me, I feel incredibly humbled by that. They have contributed because they know there's an issue here that the state has not dealt with.
The Liberal cant is asking whether all grooming is bad in this country, all exploitation of young girls is bad, or just one particular type done by one particular...
All grooming is bad.
Because I didn't hear you say that.
All grooming is bad.
Okay.
And all rape is bad. And all treatment of underage children is bad.
You've advocated the deportation of all illegal immigrants, and you've said we need to start rapidly...
Hang on, repeat that. What did I say?
You've advocated the deportation, I believe, of all illegal
I'll tell you my
migrants.
position on this.
No, I want to just get this quote out. We need to start rapidly emptying the tub. Do you believe there are too many Muslims in this country? Is that where you stand?
I believe there are too many illegal migrants in this country.
Do you believe there are too many Muslims in this country?
So I have said, and I'm on record, and I'll say it to you clearly, I would detain and deport all people arriving here illegally. The basis of a sovereign nation is
That's
to defend...
That's not the question I asked. Do you believe there are too many Muslims?
You
can say yes or no. Just say yes or no.
I am intent on detaining and deporting all illegal migrants. I am intent on deporting all people living here illegally. I am intent on detaining all criminals, foreign criminals, in our prisons straight away.
Yeah.
I am also intent on deporting those people who knew that rape was happening within their family and didn't report it.
You've talked about how you'd like to see illegal migrants put on an island off Scotland with minimal food, your words, and let the midges do the rest.
That's what I said.
So do you advocate pain and suffering for anyone who washes up here?
I advocate detaining and deporting. But if because of the Human Rights Act, which, as you know, beds the ECHR
let the midges do the
within
rest.
it, embeds the ECHR within it. If our arguably deficient legal system doesn't allow us to act as a proper sovereign nation, no, hang on, let me answer.
I'm quoting your words. You put them on an island off Scotland with minimal food and let the midges do the rest.
Before you jump in like Rumpelstiltskin, let me answer. So, if our legal system doesn't allow us as a sovereign nation to deport, which personally I would repeal a number of acts, including the Human Rights Act. And I would deport them straight away because they've travelled across safe countries, which they shouldn't do. They shouldn't do.
Starve to death.
Under international law, they should not be travelling across safe countries to get here.
Yeah.
France should not be being paid 500 million a year and then shipping
this
over
as migrants
here.
Should be left with minimal food and let the midges do the rest.
So therefore, hang on, I'll answer your question. I said what I said because I mean it. And at the end of the day, if you don't think the British people agree with me, then you're wrong, because they do. They've had enough of it. You don't have illegal migrants living next to you, Emily, because you live in a part of the country that probably doesn't have them.
And if you did, you would want them to starve to death.
So you are part of this liberal elite who basically says, do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so I'm sorry, what I meant was, and I mean it, is if our legal system doesn't allow us to detain and deport, we should set up a tented camp on an island. We should not treat them unfairly, but we should equally not put them at the top of waiting lists for dental treatment, for medical treatment. We should not give them spending money. We should not effectively treat them as if they have been taxpayers for years. They haven't been. They are illegal migrants. And by the way, they're not asylum seekers. They're economic migrants, most of them. So I mean, I know the virtue signalling do-gooders want to sort of feel good about themselves, but if you really want to, go and live next to these people. Go and spend your life, and you have them ogling at your children in school and things. No, that's wrong. And what's happened is our state no longer puts the honest, decent, tax-paying British citizen at the top of the agenda. They have been relegated to a second-class citizen, and we are bringing people in here who've contributed nothing, who have come in here illegally, and most of them have been allowed to stay for the simple reason that we are signed up to all these nonsensical international treaties that are meaningless. And and why do you think people voted to leave the European Union, Emily? Why do you think they did? Because they want their country back. They want their borders back. They want sanity back. So I'm sorry, yes, if they want to come here, and if you can't deport them, put them on an island until they ask to go home.
And let the midges.
And who else does that? Australia do that, don't they?
Rupert
Have you
Lowe.
heard of Nauru Island in Australia? Does Australia now have a problem with illegal immigration? No. It used to, doesn't now. So I'm afraid sometimes you have to be hard to be kind. And these people will learn very quickly, don't come to the UK. It is not just going to hand out a load of candy to you and let you take priority over the people who've lived here all their lives. British people don't want that. And do you think we've had too much illegal and legal migration? You probably don't.
And let the midges
Do you think we've had too much legal and illegal immigration in the recent past?
This is not about me.
You're not answering the question. You expect me to answer the question. You're not answering them.
Well, one day I'll come on your show, Rupert, and we can do a good interview then.
You can come on my podcast.
That would be lovely. Rupert Lowe, thank you very much.
Pleasure, Emily.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.